Hello again. My name is Daniele Siragusano. Today I'm talking about the things I get paid for. Yesterday I told you about things I'm interested in. We're talking about a stereoscopic 3D post-production. So it will concentrate as a front lecture a little bit more on the technical sides, but also give you some insight of the creative steps we are doing. Like yesterday, I always start with this chart, like yesterday, and because for those of you who weren't there yesterday, I have to mention this again, that the whole process of stereoscopic movie making has to be considered in order to get the right perception in the brain of the observer. So we have to know about, and there we have to do a lot of research still, how the perception is going on in the brain, how the screening is, how we're doing the post-production, and how the geometric situation on set is, like where are the scenes, the objects within the scene, where is the camera, which focal lengths, all this together builds up the final process. And if one of these elements are not in a really accurate way, then the whole perception can be diminished. And yesterday we were here in this perception base, and today we jump into this middle part here, which is called post-production. And if we zoom into this little box, we see this little box, and this is our post-production workflow. I will go in the next 1 hour through all of these steps, and I give you a brief overview first, so you know what you're going to hear the next 1 hour. We will follow the material that was shot on set here through the process of dailies and what we're doing during shooting, what is a quality report, and then the stereo dailies went into the stereo edit and what we're doing there, and how it comes back to the post-production facility, what you all need to do a reconform on the original raw data, and after that, when you have the final edit back conformed on the raw images, what other steps we need, technical steps and creative steps to finish our movie for one delivery. And after that, you got your master, and then there is a lot of other things to do to get the different types of distribution master for TV, for film out, for 2D DCP. There's a lot of things to do at the back end of the deliveries. And this has, in a professional production, this has to be really carefully planned, because if you're doing an inefficient workflow here, this will eat you up a lot of money if you're doing more steps that are necessary. So, stereo dailies and stereo QC. What is the motivation for starting right at the first step with stereoscopic, the stereoscopic process? The first motivation is you want to tell the production if everything is good in the picture. So for this, you have to do stereoscopic dailies. So you have to review the material that was shot at the same day or at the next day at least in stereoscopic vision to judge it not only in 2D, for 2D characteristics, but also for 3D characteristics. And later on we will see if we're doing the dailies stereoscopically, the editing in the editing suite is pretty easy achieved because of the stereo dailies. And you have to imagine if a cutter at the back end wants to cut 8 hours a day with the glasses on, they need corrected images, corrected for distortions, geometric distortion, color distortions, and so corrected material reduces the pranks and the fatigue in the rest of the post-production workflow. So this is the motivation. If we have a choice, we love to take our trailer with us. This is a big grading suite. We had the first time for Measuring the World. And actually this is a 4-meter screen, and as we heard yesterday, 4-meter screen you are 4 meters away for the middle of a cinema. So all these seats are designed just for stereo, and when you think about this things we have said yesterday, that about 2 meters or 3 meters, some aspects of stereoscopic perception are the same as for cinema. So in this viewing situation, you can really judge the images and you can really say how they scale for cinema. This is the critical size we found out. 4 meters is a good size where you are in the cinema viewing condition mode. And this is why this is pretty important, and also pretty important for the production who are not so, for parts of the productions who are not so experienced with stereo, that they can really see what they are doing, and they don't have to just trust a stereographer that says, yeah, on this small monitor it looks weird, but it will look good on a cinema. Back in Ecuador, we couldn't, for example, for measuring the world, we couldn't take the truck with us, so we switched to a monitor, and for this we have to judge the material, and with our knowledge and experience, we have to always translate it to the big cinema and in our minds, and this is only done by experience, and but this is possible also. Oh, too fast. So in terms of programs for dailies, so for the guys who are interested in tools, we're using Onset Dailies. This is a software from the company Colorfront in Hungary, and this is a pretty powerful software which allows to make at the same time different deliveries, and it makes the grading and the stereo correction pretty efficient, and the stereoscopic tools they have inside are also pretty good. So what are strong characteristics or stereoscopic characteristics we look the picture at, so we examine the picture. Beside all the traditional things you spot in a QC, like boom in the picture or dust on the lens, stuff like that, you double this up because you can have a boom just in one picture, or in the left or in the right view, or you can have spots on the left image, on the right, or on the mirror. So the possibilities where problems can occur are multiplicated. But besides that, we also examine the stereoscopic characteristics. We report the stereographer on set for strong asymmetries. We will see later what these asymmetries are. We will record and check the maximum absolute parallax, so the most farthest object and the most nearest object, that they stay in the terms we have arranged with the stereographer. So at the beginning of a shooting, we talk to a stereographer, and he explains to us what his style is and what his in which kind of depth budget he wants to be for different situations, and we check that and see if everything went right. The same for maximal relative parallax, so it's basically the depth budget, the contrast. And for critical shots, we are viewing critical shots always on the big screen. So if we are doing dailies at our facility, if we have some shots that are above this limit values, it does not mean that the shot cannot be used. It's because we heard yesterday that a lot of factors are affected by the image layout, and you cannot say, okay, you have a absolute parallax of 20, and then in the one shot it's 22, and that does not mean that you cannot use it. But you have to watch it a little bit carefully and judge it with a human cognition on a big screen. So what are we doing? We are in each process where we modify the stereoscopic characteristics, and in each step we have a so-called 3-symmetry principle. This is pretty old, and it comes from the stereoscopic projection, also from the screening environment. You always have to make sure that 3 kinds of symmetries are symmetric. It's color symmetry, time symmetry, and spatial symmetry. So temporal symmetry is the temporal sync between the eyes. You have to check that these are correct. The color symmetry defines that the color difference between the left and the right eyes are lower one threshold, and the spatial symmetry is meant about geometric relationship and also focus and blur. This is because this is due to the lens and the spatial domain. Blur and focus also lives in this spatial symmetry check. So we check and we correct for these three symmetries all the time, and we start at the dailies. And if one of these symmetries are stronger than normal, we report that. We then do a horizontal image translation. This, I think I have a slide later on what this exactly is. I think every one of you knows it. When you shift both images against each other, you can define the object that is put on the screen plane, but I have later a slide on. Then, of course, really important to establish a certain look during the dailies is the creative color correction. So we're doing during dailies creative color correction, and this is pretty crucial to establish a certain look just from the start on. And this is a lot of people with digital recording, and they forget about the importance of the color correction. So we have a lot of productions that are doing dailies just with one lookup table, and then they get pretty clean dailies into the editing room, and then 3-4 months they are editing with this clean dailies, and they're doing test screenings with this clean dailies, and everyone is watching, the producer and everyone is watching these clean dailies. And then later on in the final color correction, you cannot, later on as a DOP, you cannot really, or it's harder to establish a really extreme look, for example. So it's pretty important to establish it pretty at the beginning of the stage, that everyone gets used to this look. Of course, we're doing a quality report, and then we export the material in a so-called frame-compatible format. What is a frame-compatible format? A frame-compatible format is, you have two streams, a left and right eye, and for the dailies, we're putting both, let's say, HD images, and you don't need the glasses for this slide, so I tell you when. So I would love to have every slide in 3D, but it's not necessary for this thing. So you have, let's say, two HD streams, and in a frame-compatible format, you put both of them into one HD stream. So you are reducing the resolution of each, and to achieve both eyes in one HD frame. So you can do 4 different things. So these are the 4 most common things. Interlaced frame-compatible coding strategy is you put the first line, the left image, the second line, the right image, and so on and so on. So it's like interleave. You don't should not mess this up with the old video interlaced, because this is still progressive frames, but both eyes are living interlaced together. And the resolution is reduced by factor 2 in terms of vertical resolution. The horizontal resolution stays the same. Over and under is basically the same as interlaced, because you are reducing the vertical resolution by factor 2, and put this not in interlaced mode, but in over-under. So basically, in terms of resolution, these both are the same. Then another, I don't know why, but common coding strategy is side by side or left and right. And there you're basically doing exactly the opposite. You're reducing the horizontal resolution by factor 2. And for checkerbox is another coding strategy. It's not so common, where you put the first pixel is left eye and the second pixel is right eye. You do it like vice versa, and for the next row it's shifted for one. So basically you have a really small checkerboard, and here you reduce the vertical and the horizontal resolution by the root of 2. We are considering these two both for two kinds of reasons. The first reason is the most, so I skip to that one here, nearly all editing rooms are equipped with displays that using the X-pole display technique. So passive, a passive system for TV, and they work like this. They have polarizer onto the pixel rows, and they basically polarizing the even lines, let's say left, and the odd lines right. So this panel is HD 1920 by 1080, but it displays each image just by the half of the vertical resolution. And if we go back, this is exactly the same as this interlaced format. So producing dailies in this kind of format is native to the display. The over-under is also, in terms of resolution, native to the display. Everything what's inside of here can go to the screen in the editing room. And if you would have higher resolution dailies, they wouldn't get to the screen, to the editing monitor, because the editing monitor reduces the resolution vertically by factor 2. If you're using side-by-side, which is for some companies common, so you have a file that is horizontally reduced by factor 2. If you send this to an X-pole display, the display itself reduces also the vertical resolution by factor 2. So you end up with having vertical and horizontal resolution by factor 2. So you end up with SD dailies. This is why we are producing this kind of dailies, because they are native to the editing room. And another thing is, we have learned yesterday that the disparity which causes stereopsis is produced by parallax, by horizontal parallax on the screen, extrinsic. And the horizontal parallax is, let's say, coded in the horizontal resolution. And if you reduce the horizontal resolution, you also reduce the depth resolution. So are you reducing your stereoscopic resolution when you reduce your horizontal resolution. So if you have, let's say, a depth budget of 30 pixels, you could put 30 people in a row, and each would lay on a different layer. Yeah? And if you then make a side-by-side, you're reducing the 30 pixel to 15, and then you're getting stereoscopic aliasing, so you cannot distinguish them anymore. So therefore, horizontal resolution is the important resolution for stereoscopic content, because there all the depth is lying. So that's why we are using this technique. Clear so far? So then we have so I think 2 years ago, interlaced dailies were pretty common. Today we tend to do over-under, because a lot of monitors understand over-under. So yeah, so it is switching from interlaced to over-under. So we're going with these dailies now to the editing room. Not this one here, of course, but like a Avid or a Final Cut, or sometimes a Lightworks, or even Premiere. So what are the challenges for the stereoscopic editing? So as we built up this workflow 3 years ago, a really critical issue was real-time performance. You don't want to, during editing, you don't want to render anything. You want real-time performance. You want to make a cut, play, watch it. This is pretty important to get the drive in the editing going. So real-time performance was a pretty big demand. Another demand was it has to be implemented pretty easily, because the editing room is cheap, and in our facility in Munich we have 11, and in Berlin we have 9, so we have 20 editing rooms, and if we would need each editing room to have upgraded with 20,000 euro, that would not be possible. So it has to be an easy implementation for stereoscopic editing. Of course, stereoscopic viewing, because as we heard yesterday, for example, in the editing, in terms, if you remember on Gestalt theory, you can really change perception and editing in stereo, and then from this making DCPs from this footage is pretty important to watch it always in stereo to make the right decisions. So stereoscopic viewing was a big demand. And of course, switching between planar, so 2D and stereo was also demanded, because most the assistant editors, they were afraid of working 8 hours a day in stereo, and for simple tasks like rough cuts and all that stuff, or sorting the material, you don't have to necessarily work in stereo viewing. So I explained the X-pol display. So what we did in the first time, what's a pretty easy approach, but which basically hasn't changed until today, is we made interlaced dailies, and the editing system just wasn't standard HD editing system. So no plugins, no special stuff, just an HD editing system, because 3 years ago there was no stereoscopic editing system. And this editing system was not aware that it's handling stereoscopic image, because for it was a progressive 24 or 25 image sequence. And the only thing it has done is, it has pixel by pixel put out the preview out onto a so-called X-pol display. And by the default layout of these dailies, it was stereo by default, because the display did the magic. So the display polarized it, you have a polarizer glass, and then you have left and right. With over-under, it's basically the same. You load in over-under, your editing system is still not aware of editing in 3D, and you send the over-under, and the most displays today, they accept over-under and make their interlaced pattern out of it. It's basically the same. If you want to switch to 2D, oh, nothing easier than that. We had basically the same system, who was not aware of stereoscopic content, but every editing system on its HD SDI output has a de-interlacer from the old days. And the old simple de-interlacer, they just throw out one of these fields and duplicate the lines. So in the case of this, they throw out the right image. So you could see with both eyes the left image just by switching on the de-interlacer and the SDI output. Today, it's also easy if you're shooting with over-under, because then the most TVs, they can switch from 3D to 2D internally. So this is not necessary today anymore, but 2 years ago this was pretty handy. When you want to go onto a projection, you can use a real-time processor like a Davio box, which converts this one combined HD SDI stream into, again, two separate HD SDI streams, and then you can go to a cinema projector pretty easily without authoring a DCP also. So if you're editing at our facility, you can really put the HD SDI cable down in the cinema. You have a remote control of your play functions of your EBIT, and then you can really just plug in a cable and with embedded audio go down, hit play, and without rendering, without the need of any DCP mastering and all that stuff. So also the scale up to a projection, which is also pretty important for the editing, is pretty easy achieved. So, oh, I hate these slides where there's so much things on it. So, but I think I have, yeah, what is also pretty important is that if you have all the stereoscopic characteristics baked into one HD stream, the editor cannot misalign, for example, those two images, because he just edits with one image stream. So he puts this one image streams and don't have to take the left one and the right one and then get a slip, or if you're doing like he transforms it, he has to do it twice, and so there's no misalignment possible because the stereoscopic characteristics are baked into this shot by us, by the dailies. And for this the editor can concentrate on the story, can concentrate, and he can have a creative engagement because he's just doing the same as in 2D. He has one clip, he throws it onto the timeline, you can put dissolves on it and everything. So you really, you don't have to focus on 3D because they are corrected, and they're color corrected, spatial corrected, and they are rendered properly, so you can really concentrate on the, on the story. And it's also easy to exchange because you have a 3D native format. For example, the things we saw yesterday, they came directly from the editing room. So there was no post-production involved, doing a DCP and all that stuff, pretty easy. Well, bad for us because we haven't done a DCP, but it's for the production, it's pretty easy. You can export it, send it over under, and then playback it somewhere. So it's pretty easy. So, a not so interesting part in post-production, and that's why I have only one slide, is we call it conforming. When the picture is locked, so when there's no editing decision anymore, so if the director likes his movie like this, there is a picture lock, and then we get a edit decision list. Not always a EDL, but like a XML or AAF. Like it's a list of the edits, and with this list of the edits, we can conform on the raw material. But if you want to do your own post-production workflow, this is pretty important. This slide, because you forget this if I wouldn't tell you. You have to think about that if you, in terms of metadata, if we render out the stereo dailies, we can only put in the metadata of one of both eyes, so the left clip name or the right clip name, but not both. So we rendered the left clip name here, and we are they're doing the stereo edit, and the EDL comes back, and then we can conform on the left eye, but not on the right eye. So you sit there, and then you have no way to come from your EDL to your second eye, and you start searching in all the folders, everything by hand, and doing the right eye cutting manually. That's why you need, in any kind of stereo data management, we are having a database. And during the dailies, and this is why it's important to make the dailies in stereo, we put into this database three things: the left clip name, the right clip name, and a possible TC timecode offset. So if you have a timecode offset, it's written into this database. And with this, you get your EDL, let's say, for the left name, and a program can look, okay, where is the left name, and then replace it with the right name. And if a TC offset occurs, just reduce or modify the source timecode in the EDL by this TC offset. So it's pretty important that you have your metadata right. So now it's getting funny. So we have the EDL conformed, and we have now the raw material in our grading system timeline. And now we're starting with not a creative process, but a technical process. It's called stereo sweetening. And you see here, again, tree symmetry. And basically we're doing exactly the same as we've done for the dailies. Yeah, you could ask, why can't you transfer the information from the tree symmetry process of the dailies to the final? I can tell you, in this tree symmetry process, we're using way more sophisticated algorithms. We use completely different algorithms to modify the characteristics. For when you're shooting, you have between 2 hours of material, sometimes 4. You cannot have really sophisticated algorithms for correcting. You have to use pretty fast and robust algorithms. And later, when you have your final 90 minutes, when you have your 3 weeks of time or 4 weeks of time, you can really do more sophisticated algorithms. And I show you which one we have. So we are using Nuke and Ocular. This is basically a compositing software and a 3D plugin set. We are using the core components of these. And what we are doing, we're doing a camera rectification and putting everything on the render farm and calculating disparity maps and we're doing an automated tree symmetry correction. So so I go now through all of these steps in detail. Temporal symmetry. So the temporal symmetry is a metadata from the set, because on set we spot them, and we cannot today easily shift the images within a frame. So we only can correct for whole frame offsets. There are some interpolation algorithms out there, but they are not robust yet. So that's why we are saying the real temporal symmetry has to be on set. So if you're on set, this really what you have to make work properly is the synchronization of both cameras. Spatial symmetry. So to correct for spatial symmetries, it's handy to know why asymmetries can occur. One thing is that you have lens distortion, and no lens or no two lenses have exactly the same lens distortion. So also if you would line up the film bags exactly in terms of in micrometer exactly, you couldn't get a pretty pixel accurate match or a pixel accurate symmetry because of different lens distortions from the one camera to the other. You got different lens magnification. No 50mm lens is like the other. The one is 50.1, the other is 49.9 or 8, so you get matched pairs, but if you measure them really to the pixel, you will see that no lens has the same focal length. So they are pretty close to each other, and for 2D it's not important. If it's 49.9, you don't see it, so it's really tiny. But if you really go down to the pixel level, then this is a factor. Of course, camera misalignment, and I'm not telling that stereographers do a bad job, but you have to think that a sensor is from a 35mm size film bag is about 24mm, and there are 2000 pixels on there. And if you try to line up it really by pixel, and you see how big the cameras are and how big the rig is, it's really, really amazing what you can do on set, but you can never do it really accurate to the pixel. And if you're doing toe-in camera, you get also other distortions like trapezial distortions. You probably have heard that before. So what are we doing to correct it? We are doing an automated correction, so there's no one sitting there by eye and trying to shift this. This would be inefficient and also be inaccurate. So we're using computer vision algorithms. They were invented, of course, from the military, so robotic, flights without pilots, all that stuff. So rectification and epipolar geometry is a domain in the computer vision. And what we are doing is we are correcting first the lens distortion if it's available, but we don't need it. As it's good to have them, then the results get more accurate, but we get pretty good results as well without it. Then we are fetching a so-called fundamental matrix. This is a process of feature tracking and calculating. Basically, we calculate how the cameras were on set. So we really have a matrix that describes the position between the cameras, how they were. And then we make a correction for that to make them plano parallel. And then we're doing this again, the feature matching, and then we're doing a even more sophisticated so-called epipolar warp. I've shown you something here. So you see here that these things, so this is not 3D, so I've just made an anaglyph version just to concentrate on the mismatch. So you have a mismatch here, a little bit there. Here it's good, so it's not linear. With the affine transformation, scale, rotate, translate. So we can correct for camera rotation. Scaling corrects for magnification errors from the lens, and translate corrects for nodal point rotations. And with this we have lined up pretty much, but not everything. You see here a little bit here, and the last bit we get with an epipolar warp, where we really warp it. But first you have to do an affine transformation to get it first all the other stuff done. and then you can do the last tweaks with the epipolar warp. So this is how the features are tracked. So we're searching for hundreds of features, and based on these features, we can correct them, automated. So we got the geometry right, and now we are looking into color symmetry. Again, it's good to know where the asymmetries come from to fight against them or to correct them. So you have two different image sensors with two different types of filters and optical filters in front of the cameras, of the sensors. This is producing a little bit of differences. You get different lenses, different optical elements. Sometimes you have also different image processing within the camera. So sometimes it's happened that one camera is on tungsten calibrated and the other is on daylight. You might think this will not happen. Oh, this is happening quite often, that the internal matrix of the cameras are mismatched. So you get differences from these. But the most difference you get is from the mirror itself. So the mirror is, you all have had your hands on the mirrors and on the mirror rigs. The mirror is basically splitting the light, half the light to the one camera and half the light to the other camera, but it does not do it equally for each bandwidth of light quality, and therefore you get different polarizations and different colors. So I have to wiggle here so you can see it. So this is left and this is right. Left, right. And you see, so I make it like this. You see a global difference, but also you see local differences. This is due to the polarization. So if you just look on her shoulder or on here on the wood floor, or also here and on her lips, it's not global but local differences. See it? And they're pretty huge. So what are we doing to correct this? Again, automated. For the dailies, we have to do a pretty fast, like one click for each shot thing. It has to be robust and really precise, robust and fast. And what we're doing is a so-called histogram equalization, histogram matching. So we're looking at the red channel, green channel, and blue channel, and we are just by scaling them, we are doing a global color correction, just to get like 50% of the shot. Or for a lot of shots where you don't have polarization, this is pretty good. It gives you 80% of the color acuity. But then later in post-production, we're doing way more. We're doing a local block-based color match. So I'll show you this now. So a histogram match or histogram equalization is pretty simple to implement. It's robust, it's fast, but it does not correct for local errors, and it's only an average. You see here? So they are kind of in the same colors, but if you look at the lips and at the shoulder and all the stuff, you see that the local problems are still there. This is what you have seen yesterday in the measuring the world. So it was just a global correction. It's good for editing. It's good for pre-screenings and that stuff. It has to be fast, but it's not the end of the song. What we then do, we use again sophisticated computer vision algorithms. We are estimating a so-called disparity map. A disparity map is a mathematical relation, a mapping from the left to the right image and from the right image to the left image. So for each pixel within the picture, we know how much pixels we have to go in the other, so like in X and in Y. Hopefully in Y not so much because we have aligned them, so hopefully only in X. And so we know the brother from one eye in the other. So we for each pixel, this maps tells you for each pixel where to find the brother in the other eye. So you have kind of some challenges to deal with. the disparity map has to be robust. And of course, yesterday we heard that there are also pixels that are only seen by one eye or one camera, like binocular occlusion. So there you have no brothers to match the color, so you have to do different things there. And transparency, you have to do it time stable, and we have put quite a long R&D to get the things really running. But if you watch now, the colors are pretty much hooked. So if you look here, it's not completely corrected. I have another example here. So this is how it was shot. The keyboard is a little bit back. Then it's the global color correction. And then here is the local color correction. So here you see how I also show it in stereo in a second. We have another example here. And now with the global correction. And this is the local correction. You really see how the colors stick together. You see it? And no colorist could do that. You could not draw a shape for each thing, and our colorists are pretty happy that they don't have to match the colors manually. So they start from here where the colors are matched together, and they just concentrate on the creative color grading. So this is pretty important, because if you have a small error in color space and you would change the contrast, then the things can fall apart. So you are not you're not safe when you match them not pretty good, that they stay like this. If you're doing a contrast correction, it can happen that certain errors are segregated. Yeah. So, and this is the start point. So I believe you have seen that all. This is the start point for creative grading. So now. After this process, the material properties are right, the geometric is right, the color is right, and here starts the creative process. And here the client comes in, so you don't have to, as a client, you don't have to mess around with this technical stuff because it's completely uncreative. And when you come to the facility, everything is corrected and you can start working. You don't have to worry about this tree symmetry stuff anymore. And now we're doing depth grading, and we kind of do depth grading and color grading kind of in the same theater and on the same system, because sometimes when you change the contrast and the colors, then you may also want to change the depth position of objects. So because color is affecting the depth perception. So where are we doing depth grading? Of course, in a grading suite, in a cinema, because we want to be in the same exactly viewing condition like later on when we watch the movie in the cinema. Of course, on a DCI compliant projection with shutter glasses we use. So we also use a 7-meter screen, and we're having exactly the same field of view like in a SMPTE specified cinema. So because we have heard that the distance to the screen affects the perception of stereo, we have kind of normalized viewing conditions, field of views, and also screen sizes to really judge the stereoscopic cinema. And this is this plot I gave you. This is just one side of the whole story, one short thing of the whole story. But I have plotted here, for example, the screen width in meter, and here is the absolute positive parallax until you reach the interocular distance on the screen. So, for example, for pretty small screens, you can really have a lot of pixels until you reach the interocular distance. And the bigger the screen gets, the bigger the pixel gets, and the less amount you have until your eyes looking parallel, and unless you're getting divergence. But you see that after a certain amount of screen size, these kinds flatten out. So you can, and we have said that, and I have also written a blog about this, what is the master screen size. I've written a paper for 2010 for the SMT, and there is all about just which screen size to use. And we came that 7 meter, when you have 7 meter, it pretty much scales up everything pretty well for larger screen size. So because between 7 meter and 20 meter, if you nail it down, there's not much happening anymore. So what are we doing? Again, horizontal image translation. We're changing the absolute parallax. Then we can also change the relative parallax, and we're doing a floating window. So here's a basic example, pretty easy. If you shoot a movie in parallel, so your cameras are parallel, you will get this kind of pictures. So the tree that is far, far away is lays in both image sensors on the same horizontal position, and everything that is in front of this tree is more on the right, in the right eye, in the left eye, and more to the right, and more to the left in the right eye. So basically you get this kind of thing. So if you watch it projected, you have no absolute parallax here and just negative parallax for everything else. If you would watch that, you would get you not really would perceive it, but you could say that everything is in front of the screen. But what you can do is you can shift both images, so you have a new lineup, which is now the man here, and you see now the tree gets an positive parallax, and the bushes here getting a negative parallax, but they are smaller than this one. And you have to choose your screen plane also when you shoot parallel on set, because you cannot freely move everything around, because you see that the amount here after shifting is exactly the amount back here in the trees. So you cannot produce, you cannot shift, for example, the bushes together, because this would cause the trees to be so far apart that you have to really strong diverge if you want to fuse the tree. So you have to put it on set, but within limits we can shift it in post as well, or we can also dynamically shift it. It is an easy implementation. You just shift 2 images. Every system can do it. It's pretty easy. It has a big effect. It has some limitations, of course. At the end, you have divergence, so you cannot shift everything like you want in the back. You cannot also shift everything to the front as you like, because then you get depth Q rivalries, as we heard yesterday, and you get edge violation if something is cut by a screen, by the screen edges here and there. And this is not 100% true, but you can think of, you not really can change the roundness. So you can do with a hit, but this is a more advanced thing. But basically you can say that the relative parallax stays the same. So in this, for example, you have object 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and object 3 is on ScreenPlane, and you can shift everything back so that object number 2 is on ScreenPlane, but 3, 4, 5 are shifted equally back, so the budget stays the same. Of course, if you, as we heard yesterday, if you put the things more in the back, your eyes are also diverging, and this will scale up a little bit the room, so it's not completely correct that you're not changing, but you're not changing it that much. What you can do is changing the interaxial distance in post. You're using, again, the same disparity maps to use this, and it's so-called novel view interpolation. But this is not like, you cannot imagine that you have like a knob where you change and then you see how they change. This is affected with more influence, so you have to sometimes doing rotoscoping, and it's more labor intensive part. But we can do this. I also have a example for that later on, a stereoscopic one. So an example for novel view interpolation is this. So you have a shot like this, where the screen plane is something about here, where you have no red and cyan lines here. And if you watch the disparity map, it is pretty contrasty. And also if you watch at the depth histogram, it tells you this one here is here back. So you have a lot of this relative parallax. And after the nodal view interpolation, the ScreenPlane is still here, but if you compare the absolute parallax of the car here behind, here it's smaller than here, and it's exactly the same on the histogram, on the depth histogram, that all this scene is reduced. So it's basically the same as if you would have a shot with a different interaction distance, with a smaller one. Floating window, you can crop one of the two images to give the horizontal border a parallax itself. So you can give the screen border an absolute parallax, and therefore it is perceived in front or behind the real surface. So you can push it out or you can push it in, and with this you can, for example, repair depth rivalries, or you can even emphasize affected. So for example, if you have someone at the ScreenPlane and there is room on the right and the left side, you can push the ScreenPlane, you can push the boundaries, the edges, more in the background. And as you remember, stereopsis is only a relative sense. You only judge things that come out of the screen because they are relative to the screen edge, more in front. But you can also shift the edges more in the back, so it all stays relative. So you perceive that the object comes out, but in true it stays on the ScreenPlane. But you just change the relative relation to each other, so you can achieve pretty cool effects with that. And why are you doing this depth grading? And it's actually the same motivation like color grading. It's you're joining single shots together that they are perceived as one sequence in stereoscopic terms. And you achieve this with a stringent depth continuity, which is only motivated by the story. So basically, you do it from the same motivation why you do a color correction. A short slide about correction for television. If you have let's say a 7-meter screen here, and this is your layout you're happy with, so the X is on the ScreenPlane, and the triangle and the square is in front of the ScreenPlane, and the circle is behind the ScreenPlane, and you are happy with this. If you would watch exactly this material on a TV, you would get this. You would also you would get those two in front of the screen, but you would have scaled the whole scene down, and everything would be looking a little bit miniaturized. So what we do is we change the absolute parallax at the absolute position of everything just by horizontal image translation. And for example, in this example, now this square is on ScreenPlane and everything else is behind the ScreenPlane, but the size of the scene stays the same like in the TV, like in the cinema. So this is a pretty simple example what we're doing in TV depth grading. So you can put on your glasses. I'll show you just one effect of the horizontal image translation, and then one more sophisticated grading. So this is how it was shot and how they wanted that to shot, pretty conservative and behind the screen. But after grading, we did like this. So we really pushed it out with horizontal image translation. And what also is pretty funny, if you watch the skin, you will notice that there is grain on the skin. And this was an effect, a stereoscopic grain we put on, because it was a film in the film. So it was about a movie maker who was shooting a movie, and the movie, the director wanted to add grain on it. So we put first grain on the left, on the right eye, 2 different grains in post, but this was like hummingbees in front of the eyes, you couldn't fuse it. Then we tested the same grain on the left and on the right eye, but this was like a grain surface, so you really perceived one surface, but you get a lot of pretty annoying stuff as well. And then we used again our disparity maps to put each grain dot at exactly this depth where the object is, it occludes. So actually we put the grain onto the surfaces of the objects, and there you get the impression that the surface and the skin is grainy. So it was a pretty weird effect. But you can do this in stereo, so you can play around with new tools, and in each movie we are experiencing new stuff. So sorry for hurting your eyes. So if you think this is a not good stereoscopic image, now you are right. If you put down your glasses, I explain you why, or you see it instantly. This is you have a lot of vertical disparity. So you think the stereographer who shot this was not good. Actually, he was one of the best stereographers. But the light went down, and he had no time to line it up, and he really said, okay, I have to shoot it now, or I cannot shoot this picture anymore. And he pretty good knew what we can do in post and what we cannot do in post. And the stuff we cannot do in post, he did pretty accurate, and everything else he just let it go. And then in post we did this. So this is just a geometric correction. This is how the stereo grading starts, and this is now the start point for grading. And then he said, it was Alain de Robe, he said, okay, pretty cool, thank you for fixing this shot, I knew you would do it, but in this shot now, the focus is too much on the ground, because it should be the focus in stereoscopic and in the story should be on this pretty crazy building and not on the floor. And can we do something to de-emphasize the volume of the floor? And we said, yes, we can use our disparity maps to do this. Have you seen the difference? So if I go back, just look on the floor. Here it really comes out of the screen, and here we bend it in depth. Of course, now we are distorting reality, but we don't want to show reality, we want to tell a story, so we don't care about reality. And of course now the track is going a little bit down, but you have not so much focus on the track anymore. And then it says, okay, good, can we do something to highlight the building a little bit more? And we said, yes, of course, we have disparity maps, we have normal view interpolation, and we just did a modification on this area here. Just look at this area. We don't modify anything here. Yeah, if you see the difference when you cut between and forwards, you're right, and also that you see that the people are getting a little bit miniaturized, but you have to see it in the edit and not as a straight line. And in the edit, it looks pretty good. But of course, if I'm showing you before and after, and the house is growing in an unnatural way, of course this looks a little bit weird. Yeah, that's from A to B. But if I would just show you this without anything, without the pre-knowledge, you would say, wow, this emphasized the building. Just some small modifications. We did a hit, and then we did floating windows. So here and here you see small floating windows that put the screen size at the screen edge in front of the real screens of the real screen. Okay. And this was the final shot. And this is what we're doing in depth grading and in post-production with some of the shots. So really massive, massive stuff in terms of geometric and in color. So we are going to color grading, and as I'm not colorist, I won't tell you about the creative stuff, because I only know that what they are changing, and I'm doing in terms of color, I'm doing color pipeline, so color workflows. So I make the technical workflow right, so that the colors are the same in each cinema and also for the TV version. So that's why I'm just telling you a little bit about the technical stuff. It's a digital-centric workflow, so film out is still an issue, so you have to go to film out, but this is not the main focus for 3D. This is now also changing with 2D, but in 3D it's really like you working for the DCP, and the film out is just a byproduct. And for 2D, the last year, it was like you're doing a completely logarithmic or film-centric workflow, because you have to go to the film out, and this was your main delivery. But as the focus changed from film out to DCP, also the color pipeline can change. We're doing color grading and depth grading at the same system, because the color affects the depth perception. We saw it yesterday with the atmospheric haze, for example. And if you have more contrast in the pictures, you also perceive more depth, light and shadows. All this stuff is emphasized in the color grading. So I believe that in the next years, the colorist will also do the depth grading, and the DOP will also do the stereo. So, or they will mix up, and they will be again 2 persons in the grading suite. One colorist doing also depth grading, and one DOP also knowing all about the stereo stuff. And I think this is the evolution where we're heading into. And of course, the colorist can also switch between 2D and 3D. It's a little bit more complicated, because you have to make sure, because each glass is changing the color, and so we have spectrometrically measured the color shift the glasses are doing, and that's why we can simulate it with glass and without glass. We're using therefore a expand system, because they are more stable in terms of color shifts. It's a more easier color shift than the Real D system, because again there you work with polarized light, and with polarized light it's a little bit more complicated. We have a mature color management. We still, when we're doing color correction also for DCP, we are still Cineon driven. This means that we still work in film color space, and this gives us the nice rich colors film can achieve. And with this Cineon driven style, you get all that crosstalk you know from film, and you get a pretty filmic experience also on a digital screen. And now we are also switching to ACES. We have done 2 short things also in ACES, and I think ACES will blow up. This is a completely new color management from the academy, and we already have adopted it. And yeah, this is technically speaking. If you want to see a color pipeline in detail, this is a simple example of a pretty easy color pipeline. And no worries, I won't go through all these steps. I just wanted to show you that we have to, all these blobs are affecting the colors. And just in the cinema projector, in the mastering projector, just this happens. And this happens in a grading suite in a pretty simple setup. This is not a complex. This happens while rendering. This happens while packaging the DCP. Inside the DCP server, also something is happening. Again, in the cinema projector, there's a lot of things happening. And what you have to achieve in color management is that the color space after the glasses of the audience is equal to the color space after the glass where the colorist sits, so that the colorist sees exactly the same color and the same color space. So a lot to do, a lot of research, and yeah, you can do a lot of errors there, and yeah, and so often colors do not work because it's so complex, because you have to be aware of each and every step. QC disparity plots. What we also do after we have graded a session, we are visualizing the absolute parallax over time. This is frames, and this is, for example, one reel of a movie, and this is this is parallax, absolute parallax in pixel, and this line tells you where the most farthest object is, and this line tells you where the closest object is. And so you can see how the style of this movie was. And this movie was a infinity-driven IMAX style, so the infinity was always on the same. And I also plotted here the specs of Sky TV. So Sky TV has some specs, and also here for come-out effects. So here, and you can see we are within the specs, so you can prove that your program is within certain specs, and it's good to have quality control. You have also some peaks here, but there is in the specs a line here for short outcome effects that can be bigger than 1% of the image resolution. More important is the relative parallax, as we heard yesterday, so the depth, contrast, and this plots you the disparity. You see that in some shots it's going up and down and up and down, and also some shots it's going over certain limits. It can go over certain limits, why not, if it's motivated by the story. But for the most of the shots, and you have things where it go down and things go up, so it's really it's really having peaks and so, and it's pretty nice to visualize this. Deliveries and other formats. So deliveries is something where you really have to go to your post-production house and really carefully plan all your deliveries, because you make DCPs, then you make for archival, you make LTOs and then you make HD CMSRs and hard drive deliveries and film out and internet and everything has additional steps to do, and you have to do it in a pretty clever way to have less steps and not more steps you need. You have a different depth grading for 3D TV, as we heard. You have a different color grading for television, because in television you have a different color space and also different viewing condition. You're not sitting in a dark cinema watching a big screen, you're sitting in a TV situation with reference white somewhere in your visual field, so a completely different story. Different color grading for print, so you have to do a match grade, a really small match grade, but you have to do a match grade for the film out. We have LUTs that help us to do this, but there's still process going on. You have a different color grading also sometimes for and most time for the 2D digital cinema package, because you have a different luminance. So the white peak luminance in 2D is standardized at 14 foot-lamberts, and in 3D cinema you have no standards, because it's so low that the DCI didn't want to standardize something that is so low. So in the best cases you got about 4 to 5 foot-lambert in good cases. But I also know cinemas that have around 1.5 or 2 foot-lamberts, and when you're sitting there, you're basically in night vision, you don't perceive colors anymore. The bright highlights looking dull because they don't have this brightness. And for there, when you have your 3D color correction applied on a 2D cinema, everything looks a little bit too bright because your peak white is different. So you have to do mostly a global compensation for that, but you also tend to do the night shots, exterior a little bit different than the interior, and so there is still something to do. You could also do, I have never done this, but you could also do a different edit for left and right. But if you do no different edit, which one is the 2D version? Is it the left or the right? And we are using a so-called hero eye principle, and this means that you early in the sweetening process, you do not touch one eye, one view. So let's say the left eye. And you're correcting only in this terms of color correction and geometry correction, you only correct the right to the left one. So you have an untouched version with untouched and unfiltered quality for your 2D masters. And this is the hero eye principle. But then you have to have a little, also think about other things. One example is title. If you want to have a title in front of the screen, it is more to the right and the left view and more left and the right view. But if you're doing a 2D version and you're just using the left eye, you get titles that are a little bit off of the middle or off its 3D position. So you have to think about this, and there are a lot of other things to consider. And there you have to talk in detail because every project is different. There's this one project that has so many different subtitles. The other has so much different editings for versions, and so there you have to discuss with your service provider for your movie, for your project. And this is my best slide because I'm finished now. And do you have any questions?
I have a question. May I have a microphone?
Thank you very much, Daniele, for the
You're
fantastic. But I would like to ask you before you finish, as you can easily imagine, because we'll be already here the 2 days, for a lot of the participants here, the technique you are presenting is, beyond the reach. Can you recommend, let us say, cheaper, economical solution in terms of softwares? Something, what you would do being on their place if they are planning to make a post-production 3D. Can you make some suggestion or
for which parts? So you search
for let's say workflow starting, they're finishing the shooting, and they everything already done, on the location now, they start the post-production. Which you believe, out of existing programs would be the best, for post-production?
Yeah, so you probably need to do, it depends on which media you shoot, but you can, if you don't have the money, go around the dailies process if you're using an editing software that is capable of importing two streams and merge them together, and I believe that Avid 6 can do this. So you could, if you don't want to do dailies, and so you need a special daily system. So if you don't want to use a special system for dailies, or you don't want to use dailies, you could use a editing system that is capable of doing all this stuff for you during the edit. So you are all the way until the edit, and then Nuke is, we are using Nuke for this stuff, and Nuke is not so expensive, but the plugins and the pipeline and all our R&D, of course you cannot afford if you want to do it by your own. And I haven't looked in too much tools, but probably if you go to in the next year, if you're going to the Adobe's Creative Suite, you are probably in a good situation for out of the box, because in Creative Suite you get an editing system which is now pretty rich with a new engine. So Premiere is getting better and better. So I believe that Adobe Premiere will be the next Final Cut. So it will take all the Final Cut user who are not willing to work on a Mac anymore, because there are no professional Mac products out there. And I think Creative Suite, and there you have After Effects with a really strong compositor and motion graphics software in there, and you have got the new grading system, SpeedGrade. Iridas was bought by Adobe last year, and they put their color corrector into the Adobe Suite. So from a low budget point of view, I would say just go for Creative Suite, and there you got editing, effects, and color correction in one box. So I would go through Creative Suite.
Thank you.
I have a question concerning this library shot.
Yeah.
What exactly did you do to make this grass not be so in front of the screen? What exactly like?
So we have the disparity map tells us for each pixel your neighbor is 20 pixels far apart. Yeah? And for the next grass it says 19 pixels, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14 until 0, let's say. Yeah? And with this information we can now say, okay, then we want, if we want to halve, let's say, the amount, we take these both pixels and we make them, we shift them, we warp them, so they are 10 pixels away. And the next 9, 8, 10, 7, 0. So we basically warp and scale each pixel, but not only by a shape or just by bending it, but driven by the real disparity map. So it's really a displacement actually. So it's, you can say it's a displacement. So you're really warping pixels.
But you are touching only the grass, or you are touching only the grass, or okay.
Yeah. So we have a disparity map, and then we draw a shape and say just work, do your novel view interpolation just in this area. So it's a combination of novel view interpolation and another shape that is saying only work here. And it's exactly the same upstairs there.
Hi, I got a question.
Hi.
When does the special effects comes? Like if it's after the 3D grading and color, or before color grading, or when?
So visual effects is for purpose not in this slide, because then I wouldn't take 1.5 hours but 3 hours. There is so the visual effects house gets the shots as early as possible because they want to do layouts, they want to start pretty early. So we are always the last in the chain, and so if we would wait for visual effects after grading, you wouldn't get your release date. So basically you are delivering the plates, the raw plates to the visual effects house pretty soon, and then mostly during editing, where the post process has a little bit of a hole, because during editing the post house is not doing anything. It's supporting the editing room, yes, but it's not doing on the project work on the project. And there we are sweetening the used visual effect plates. So we take the plates, we have delivered them, and we're doing the geometric correction and the color correction. And what we then do, we give them the geometric correction as metadata. So we give them, like in Nuke, this is a visual effects software, we give them a modification node where they can render their CG objects, for example, through this modification, and then they can comp their CG renderings directly onto the image. So it's completely difficult but pretty flexible, like if you're doing like this. So you can really start onto unaligned images, doing your work, and also doing your renderings on unaligned images, and then putting the output of your rendering through the same correction as the plate was going through. And then it comes before color grading and depth grading, of course, back into the back into the timeline, and then when you are doing color correction, you got most of the visual effect shots already in a kind of final stadium.
Any questions?
Let's say I'm a one-man band creating my 3D projects, and I'd like to have a 3D monitor or TV. What technology would you recommend, rather the passive or the active?
I would recommend for this purpose the passive ones. As we are using passive ones because, first of all, the passive glasses are easier. In terms of they're lighter in weight, is lighter, right? So if you're sitting 5-6 hours, the active glasses, they tend to be pretty uncomfortable on your nose. So just this factor. And the other thing is that if you are in an illuminated area and you have like 50 hertz electricity power, and you are synced with 60 hertz with your shutter glasses, and you look around, everything tends to flicker, depend on the light source. And also the monitor where your graphical user interface is on, if this one is not synchronized, it also flickers a little bit with this things. And we found out that passive glasses are more comfortable when you work with stereo image, but you have always half of the vertical resolution. That's the trade-off.
I was talking more, I mean, I work with both of the solutions on a daily basis, but I was talking rather about the color quality.
No, there is no Class A monitor.
You said that you were working with expand glasses, which are active?
Yeah, but for cinema. For TV, we're doing the color correction on a Class A monitor, because there is no Class A monitor in 3D yet. So there is no Class A monitor. So they have announced, Sony have announced one, but I haven't had them in the hand. So we're doing the TV color correction on a Class A monitor, 2D, and we're doing the depth grading for TV on a 3D monitor, which is calibrated to Rec 709, but you cannot get the same contrast ratio and all that stuff on a 3D monitor. They are too bad.
Okay,
there's no good one. But you can calibrate them to get as close as possible.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
There's more questions?
Yeah, one more, please. Because I didn't get your point, actually, in terms of this 3D grading for TV purposes. Why does it supposed to get more negative than it was in the cinema?
It gets smaller. So if you watch it uncorrected, your complete scene would be shrink down. For example, if you have a cinema screen that is 10 meters away, and you have a people standing in front of the screen in the cinema, it can look big and great, and you look there, and then the person looks big. Yeah? If you do no correction for TV and it comes out of your TV in your living room, you compare this object or this man with your TV and with your surrounding and with your bottle of beer standing next to the TV, and then it looks miniaturized. So you have to push him behind the screen, and there it's like you're having a window, you're looking through, and then you have the size. This is basically what you correct for, because you have a different adaptation, you have a different version position, you have a different accommodation and version situation. There's a whole different story in TV, and you adapt for that in a different session, depth grading session.
So I would like, Tempo, thank you very much. And I would like to